Shall we get to the news? We got a bunch of news this week.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. Alpha South American. All the ships and clippers at sea. Let's go to press.
Game news. First up in the game news, we got not one but two pieces of 18XX news. First up, 1860 Railways on the Isle of Wight, a classic of the genre, is going to be coming to Kickstarter on January 26th. January 26th is going to have 1860. 1860 first came out in 2004. It's a Mike Hutton design, and people that know 1860, Mike Hutton probably does some of the very best of the 18XX. He's a fairly prolific 18XX designer, and Isle of Wight is interesting in two ways. First of all, very small map. Very tight, very small map. This is a game for 2 to 4 players only. A lot of 18XX games can play up to 6. And then the other thing is that it has this mechanism at the game end where there's a nationalization of the rail systems on the Isle of Wight. And the way it works is the worst performing the railway is, the first one that gets swallowed up by the nationalization project. So basically,
I see.
Weaker companies are getting eliminated as we get to the end, and only the strong survive. Kind of.
Got it.
Yeah, it's a cool thing. It's a very interesting mechanism. It's a heavy duty 18XX game. This is not for beginners. This is something that
Right. Maybe not for the casual players out there.
No. But if there was a casual, now you've played 18XX, Jake. So
I have. I've actually played, I think, 3 different ones now.
This is what I'm saying.
Don't ask me the names because I will not remember which years I played.
That's okay. But for a casual gamer, you are surprisingly versed in 18XX. 18 Chesapeake is the other title that I have to talk about today. 18 Chesapeake is the Jake 18XX game. It is widely considered fairly new and widely considered to be one of the best for new gamers, one of the best for lighter gamers. Doesn't take too long, pretty easy to understand, and you can get right into it. Well, guess what? They now have an expansion. They have 18 Chesapeake Off the Rails expansion for it. It costs $15, available at All Aboard Games. Right now you can order it. And this expansion is kind of like a contraction, not an expansion. What it does is it takes trains out of the game as opposed to putting them in the game. And if you know anything about 18XX, the trains are the clock of the game.
Yeah.
The fewer trains there are, the quicker you're moving up the trains and getting toward the end of the game, which is really interesting. And it also replaces the stock market with a different stock market that seems to be a lot faster, a lot more aggressive. This seems like this is going to be an 18 Chesapeake that is going to play faster. Scores are going, money is going to be flying off the rails and getting higher because it actually gives you, it's a weird thing where it says the game is going to take away trains and yet make the market pool, the bank pool, bigger. So more money, fewer trains. Sounds like this is going to be a real sort of wild ride.
I'm down. I'd like to try that sometime.
Yeah. You would, if you haven't played 18 Chesapeake. My guess is that you've played 3 different games. One of them has been that. I know that I played 1846 with you.
Yep, that one for sure we played together, and then I played one with Maddie, and then another one with the group one day when we split up into pairs. Gotcha. But that one I can't remember.
Anyway, so that is available right now. 1860 is going to be on Kickstarter coming up end of this month, and 18 Chesapeake Off the Rails expansion, $15 at All Aboard Games. Next up, we have a new. Yeah, I'm going to say it's a brand new thing coming out in the Terraforming Mars universe. Terraforming Mars Ares expansion. That's ARES. And that is about all I can tell you about it. It has been announced, but it is not. The details are not really forthcoming. What we seem to understand from people that seem to know what they're talking about but aren't really saying much is that this is not an expansion to Terraforming Mars. This will be a standalone game set within the Terraforming Mars universe. So to me,
and
that
it says here. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. You say it.
Well, it says it's only using cards. That's
yes.
interesting.
It seems like it will be boardless.
Huh.
It'll be card based. So if you think about Terraforming Mars, though, when you get right down to it, almost the entire game is playing cards, right? And only occasionally is the effect of the cards to build something on the board, right?
That's true, but I seem to remember really loving the way the board looked.
Oh,
like I know
it's
I'm
fantastic.
always a sucker for the design, but I remember thinking that one was gorgeous. So to take that away is an interesting move.
It is. It is. What if? Just as a what if? In the game, if you got rid of, in Terraforming Mars, the basic projects, right? Basic projects are, without playing any cards, I can spend 25 and build a city, right? Or I can spend 18 and build a forest, right? Or so on and so forth, right? And I could do all that sort of stuff. If you had to use cards to build everything, then the card itself could potentially be that object, right? So you play the card that allows you to build the domed city, right? Without a board, that card could then go on you could be building a map by playing those cards into the center of the table, potentially. Well, listen, we don't know what.
Do you think the cards might be the hexagons, the same as
I think well, no, I think they'll still be card shaped, but you can.
Right.
There are many games that there's one of the earliest ones that did this. Well, I'm not sure earliest, but there was a pirate game called Plunder where the cards themselves became the map of the Caribbean as you would lay things out.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, it is.
Hey, maybe it'll be amazing. I mean, I know just for me, because I'm so drawn into like the look of things, that to strip that away definitely is a bit of a red flag. But then again, the game is awesome.
Yep.
Maybe it'll be awesome without that.
Listen, I love the idea that you're going to take the essence of Terraforming Mars and you're going to make a slightly different game out of it. Terra Mystica begot Gaia Project, right? And Gaia Project is absolutely amazing. Couldn't have existed if it was just an expansion. It needed to be.
Well, also, isn't your jam kind of like just get to the heart of the idea? You don't need a skin at all, really. And if you could reduce all games just down to their idea and a handful of cards, you would probably, right?
Yeah, we'll actually be talking about this with the sommelier today, but. The older school games, like the games when I was coming into the hobby, games of Reiner Knizia and Wolfgang Kramer, stuff like that, they were elemental. They were super simple. They were all based around one mechanism, one idea. And they played so cleanly and so well and so wonderfully that way that, nowadays, listen, we have so many great games right now, but they are fluffy. They have a lot of extraneous parts, right? And sometimes I do like stripping that down, with a sort of simmering that sauce and reducing it and getting to the meat of what it is that you've designed. And so maybe this will be that. We do know that there was a Terraforming Mars dice game that they were developing, and this is not that, we've been told. So we don't have to worry about that. Trey is safe for the time being. But Terraforming Mars, Ares expansion, there will be more information forthcoming quite soon. Next up, It's a Wonderful Kingdom. This is, speaking of different games that are set within the same universe, there was a game that came out in 2019. Trey and I played it at BGG Con called It's a Wonderful World. It's a Wonderful World felt very Seven Wonders. It was sort of a Seven Wonders variant where you have a hand of cards and you're playing them to gain resources, and then sometimes you're using those resources to play a card into your tableau in front of you. We were not that impressed by it. I thought it was okay. I didn't think it was great. But there's some people that really, really love that game system. It's worked really well for people, and some of them prefer it to Seven Wonders. I don't personally. But there is a new implementation of this called It's a Wonderful Kingdom, and this is 1 or 2 player only, set in a low fantasy universe, so I am out, and Jake, you are in.
Yeah, the art looks pretty good. I mean, it's got like the cover art is really all that you can see, but it seems to have a big like time era span. They got some guys building ships on top and knights, Templar kind of vibe on the bottom. It could be cool.
That's true. That's absolutely. I can't argue with that. I will say that this game supposedly is played with different modules, and each module offers a different mechanical variant in terms of the game. It sounds a little bit like Glenmore 2 Chronicles, in which each variant of the game changes the rules slightly, which can be good. That can be a good way to extend the lifespan of a game by having it be a little bit different every time you play. So if you like It's a Wonderful World, It's a Wonderful Kingdom is definitely something you should look at. And I'll be the first to say, while I didn't respond to It's a Wonderful World, some people I respect quite highly quite like that game. So don't rule it out just because I didn't like it. I played it.
Sure.
I played it late in a very long convention, so you never know. That could always figure into things as well. Next up, this might be more of a Jake game here. Daniel Piechnik has designed a game for Roxley Games called Radlands. Radlands is going to be a 2-player card-playing, deck-building kind of game. It's going to be coming to Kickstarter on January 26th from Roxley Games. And let's see what we can tell you about it. Radlands is a competitive dueling card game about identifying fiercely powerful card synergies. Isn't every card game. You're going to be the leader of a post-apocalyptic group of survivors in a tooth-and-nail fight to protect your 3 camps from a vicious rival tribe. And if all of your camps are destroyed, you lose the game. The main resource is water, not gasoline, but water. And you're going to spend, people and events and use the abilities on your card to try and win the game. So sounds very typical, right? Other than the fact that it's post-apocalyptic, it sounds like a lot of these card games. There is one difference, though. It seems that both players are going to be drawing from the same deck. Now,
that's interesting.
Yeah, because in a lot of these games, you build your own deck and then you're drawing through yours. This is people coming from a common deck, which makes it more like Dominion in terms of the way it's designed. So Dominion with a competitive player versus player element sounds pretty good. Sounds interesting. It's not...
The art looks cool. Again, I hate to go back to that.
No.
I'm going to be holding a handful of cards, and that's what I'm staring at. I like this art. It's got a certain something to it.
Yeah, there's a teaser on YouTube. Look for Radlands from Roxley Games, and very well produced teaser. They know what they're doing in terms of production.
Sure. Yeah, of course.
It's gonna be
cool. Well, I would definitely be down to try that one for sure.
Yeah, for me, it's definitely a try before you buy, but that's because that's not my not my particular.
Well, you know how many games I own, Tom.
Genre. Yeah. Well, once you get to the 1,000 game limit that Jake's at, you really gotta watch.
I don't have any more space. That's the problem. I got to buy a whole nother house.
That's just the way it is sometimes. Next up is a game called The Initiative. The Initiative is going to be by Unexpected Games, and it is available for pre-order right now at unexpectedgames.com. The Initiative looks really quite interesting. It is a game by the designer of, well, he's a designer of many things, but let's say the thing he's most famous for designing, Battlestar Galactica, the board game.
That was my first board game, Tom.
That was Maddie's first. That was the day I met Maddie and you.
That was the gateway for me.
I came over and I taught you both.
I remember it well. I literally remember it very well. Do I remember most of our game nights? No, it's all a blur of just laughing with my friends. But that I remember quite well.
That was when I met you, and then Maddie a week later came over to my game night for the first time.
That's it, and I was hooked.
Everybody, a lot of people. We brought a lot of people into the hobby from that because it is such a good game.
It's so good. It
Battlestar
really
Galactica is amazing. Corey Konecka, I always mispronounce his name. I apologize, Corey. Was the designer of that game, and he's the designer of the initiative. And this could be really interesting. Corey doesn't, I'm not a fan of everything that he's designed, but he is always a very interesting designer. The initiative is set in 1994. Four teenagers find a mysterious game at a yard sale. Sounds a little Jumanji, right? And as they play it, they discover that it is strangely connected to their lives. What will they risk to unravel the secrets of the initiative? All right, so here's...
The artwork is so dope, by the way. I'm just looking at it now, and even the instructions look like an old school comic book. It's really fresh.
It's actually not just the instructions. The comic book is part of the game.
I didn't realize.
Yeah. Each, it's a 48-page comic book, and each time you play the game, you're going to be reading, a page to 2 pages of the comic book that is going to bring you into the story.
I absolutely love this just immediately.
Right? And then your characters 100%. In the story are going to play the board game, and if you're clever and if you're paying attention, you can unlock decoding, puzzle solving, cracking logic problems that will end up allowing you to discover more things. Like there's all sorts of hidden stuff in every page of the comic book, in every bit of the game, so that you can unlock more. You never play the same game a second time. And failing simply means that you didn't learn any new secrets in terms of the game.
This looks right up my alley.
It looks like QAnon the board game, unfortunately.
That's harsh, but okay.
It is.
You just lost this game like an entire swath. I'm not doing that.
No, I wish we weren't living in a time where a game about a vast conspiracy and looking for patterns where there might be none is not problematic. But
back to taking a deep breath and calming down.
Yeah, well, no, I think there's a lot of Stranger Things. I think there's a lot of it looks great. It doesn't look QAnon. It doesn't look QAnon at all. It looks kind of fun and a little retro and light. And I'm dying to learn more about this game. So
absolutely.
So keep your eye out for this one. It's kind of a really interesting situation here, and I'm looking forward to finding out more about it. Cool. And that is all of the good news. And unfortunately, we're going to talk about some bad news now. The first bit of bad news, Jake, you don't even know about this because it came across the transom within the last couple hours of this recording. Efka Bladakas from No Pun Included, we love Efka, brought to our attention a deleted post that was made by Daniel Tascini. Daniel Tascini is one of the designers of Zolkin, Teotihuacan, Voyages of Marco Polo, some of our very favorite games. He's one of that Italian gaming collective, and posted something that is I'm
cringing already. I haven't even heard it yet. And I'm already nervous.
I will. So the argument he was having online with somebody was about a fantasy-themed game, and it seems like we don't have the other part of it, but it seems like the other person was saying, "Why are the orcs black? Why are the orcs? You know what I mean? Why are those the bad guys?" And so on and so forth. And the Google translation, which is never perfect, so you're never sure, you can be missing a lot of context and things like that. But he definitely is sort of going there and saying that, I don't even want to get into what exactly he said, but it sounds
it's of a derogatory nature, perhaps.
He talks about calling his darker complected friends the N-word.
Come on.
Yes, it appears so. Now, listen, maybe it's different in Italian. I don't know. I can't say that, but it's not good. He's saying how he'll never call people black because they're not black, and it's some sort of weird defense of of dark and light, meaning good and bad in fantasy games, and it comes off very, very bad. So, what else can we say other than there is a darkness in this world, there is a darkness in people in this world, and there's a reckoning that needs to happen, and it needs to happen now. We are aware of the problem, and we are growing more and more aware with it every day. And for all the damage that Twitter and social media is doing, it's also bringing to light the darker aspects of our natures, and I think that can be a good thing if the right things come out of that. So I just hope everybody takes a look into that situation. I know that for me personally, that is going to impact me. That is going to impact my decisions in terms of...
That's interesting you say that, because the thing that immediately comes to mind whenever someone who has affected the world in what I like to think of as a positive way creatively is sort of, let's say, ousted, or that we learn that perhaps personally they're not the nicest person in the world, or perhaps their thinking isn't as correct as we'd like it to be, I immediately think, how will the people who enjoy the good things like the games or the art or the movies or the music, are we going to be able to separate out the product from the producer? Or are we damning his creation along with the creator? It's a whole discussion, but it's one that I can't quite find myself on either side of the line on. I go back and forth between thinking, do I ever get to enjoy Michael Jackson's music again? Or can I just have that as its own thing? In a simple sort of quick response, do you have thoughts on that?
I got so many thoughts about it. Listen, for me, I'm not going to stop playing Zolkin. I'm not going to stop playing Teotihuacan, right? Because I'm not aiding and abetting anybody by doing that. I think those are still amazing games. I think Daniel Tascini is an amazing designer.
Right.
You could be an amazing designer and a horrible human being, right? You can be like some of the great people of history were horror stories in their personal life and in their views and in their values and stuff like that. And we do need to separate that out. But at the same time, going forward, do I want to buy a future design by a person whose views I find abhorrent? And at a certain point, am I supporting them in doing that? And is that cancel culture? I mean, by the definition most people throw around, yes, it is. But at the same point, am I supposed to be forced to buy things from people that I don't like and don't want to be associated with? No.
I think you found the crux of it right there. Is can we enjoy what already exists? I don't see why not. But are we going to support moving forward someone that we can't really support moving forward? I think that's well said, Tom. I think I agree with you 100% on that.
And let me just say, I will say this is really early. This is, there was I had a question as to whether or not I should even bring this up but it is proliferating very quickly. I'm not hearing this from one source. I've seen several other sources that are talking about this already. So
sure,
I figured it was the right time to talk about it. And I'm not going to close the door on anything or anyone. If Danielle wants to argue his case or wants to apologize, I'm certainly going to be open to the possibility of that. But I will say that my threshold for what constitutes a significant apology and a what would you call it? Penance, like a sort of of making things. You've made things worse. Now I'm going to make things better. I put a pretty decent bar on that. I try
as
to
you should.
I try to teach my kids that all the time. Like, what is that a real apology? Is that acceptable?
Yeah.
Or
are you just saying it
because
you think that's the thing to say?
Exactly. And we do believe in my family in making things up. right? You got to make
Yep.
it up to this person, right? It's not enough to
Absolutely.
simply say, I'm sorry, you hurt that person. You hurt that person in a real and significant way, and it's going to take more than just an apology to fix that. And we got to be, restorative justice is what
Absolutely.
I believe in 100%.
Well, here's hoping that maybe it's not as bad as it sounds, though it sounds pretty bad. And
Yes.
let's see. Let's see. I like your idea of just keeping an open mind, not,
Yeah.
closing a book 100%. But it's hard when you hear something like that. How do you not respond with an instant disgust and like, whoa, okay.
It's bad. It's bad. We have a,
That's bad.
I've often thought of our hobby as a kinder, gentler place than a lot of the rest of the internet and a lot of other hobbies. When I go to Gen Con, the security people say it's their favorite convention of the year because people are genuinely nicer than most other conventions.
Yeah.
They're not, they're not getting hammered. They're not, there's not all the sexual harassment. There's not that there's none, but that they find there's less sexual harassment. There's less fights. There's less trouble. There's less theft and stealing. This hobby tends to be people that are just better behaved, and like I said, I've heard that from the security people that their jobs can be a real nightmare in a convention sense in a lot of cases.
Sure.
And I've always held on to that. But you look at instances like this, and it causes you to reevaluate and say, "Hey, look, I'm a hetero white male saying that we have a really good hobby. It is not that experience for a lot of other people, and these viewpoints that we don't even hear about all the time are a reason that it's not." And so I don't say that about our hobby anymore. I talk about our hobby as our hobby has a lot to grow and a lot to change and a lot of things we need to do to be the inclusive place we try to pretend that we are and are not yet.
Absolutely. Just like the real world. Always
Indeed.
room to grow.
Absolutely. And the second shot, here we go. The Phil Eklund story continues. So people should know, I've talked about him before. Phil Eklund is the designer of games such as the PAX system. Basically, he was the godfather of the PAX games. Also, High Frontier, BIOS Origins, and the other BIOS games. So a fairly prolific designer on the heavier end of the spectrum. So games that we would very much like. Unfortunately, Phil also holds some views that I personally find abhorrent and very, very difficult. And he doesn't just hold these views, he puts them into essentially liner notes in these games. It's really...
we've discussed this. I mean, even just on the episodes that we've done together, we've discussed this before.
Yes. So it's to the point that if you search for the name Phil Eklund on Google right now, the second result I get, I don't know if people get completely different results, but the second result on my Google search for Phil Eklund says, "Please enlighten me on Phil Eklund. I recently listened to the latest Game Brain podcast where host Tom Donnelly spoke about how great this game is or whatever, so on and so forth, but how bad Phil Eklund is." So the second thing on Phil is us talking about Phil. So the reason I bring this up today is that Andy Mesa is an employee at Ion Game Design, and that is a game design company that employs Phil Eklund as a designer. And he has came out with a sort of a letter on why he disagrees with Phil and why even though Ion Games Design is going to continue to make Phil Eklund games, at least for the time being, that he is going to, well, I guess how would you put it? Sort of find a way to voice a different opinion than Phil's on some of the trickier things Phil has said, and this comes from a long COVID-19 discussion with Phil, where Phil was and has been for a long time stating flat out lies, flat out things that are absolutely not true, creating pseudoscience about the effectiveness of lockdowns using very misleading statistics and incorrect information. And Andy, God bless him, Andy has been fighting back and saying that is not true. That is not true. Here's the actual data. And it's just awful. It's just awful.
Oh, Phil.
If you and the problem is that these ideas and these notions, and there are a lot of them. It's not just about COVID. It spans all sorts of things. He does games about history and he does games about science, and his take on history and his take on science often is controversial. Often is very, very different than what you'd be hearing. And there are a lot of people that say dead on wrong is what he is.
That's the word that comes to my mind, but I try so hard not to be judgmental.
Sometimes you got to. And the problem is that the wrongness of his viewpoint is not always just in the liner notes, but sometimes it makes it into the game itself. There is it's a really long read, I will tell you. There is an essay from Bowdoin College by Patrick Rael, Rael. He's a professor of history at Bowdoin College. And in 2019, he wrote a paper, 46 pages long, called PAX Exasperation. PAX Exasperation, and it is about the PAX game that Phil Eklund designed called PAX Emancipation, about the freeing of slaves. And, I read it. I read the whole thing, and it's astonishing. If you want to go deep into both the potential for games to do good and when they can go horribly wrong, this essay is quite astonishing. I'll just read an excerpt. The rush to condemn colonialism ignores illiteracy, tribal slavery, and warlord anarchies that the colonies replaced. Slave conditions would have lasted centuries until indigenous literacy or Enlightenment values were independently discovered. Whatever vices and abuses occurred under the name of Western imperialism, it was the only tortuous path to freedom. That's what Phil Eklund said. And he wrote it right into this game, and he said it before. He also called Abraham Lincoln a great dictator. So, to do a game about slavery and to have that point of view that somehow you can claim that you know for a fact that slavery would have existed much, much longer if we didn't have Western slavery is astonishing.
It's bonkers.
I mean,
it's bonkers. It's cuckoo bananas, as my wife would say. I mean, what are we supposed to do with that except say, like, okay, Phil, time to go sit in the corner. You know what I mean? Like, come on.
So unlike unlike Daniel Tascini, who I don't know enough about the situation yet, I know plenty enough about Phil, and I know enough about a situation, and I personally am not going to be supporting him anymore by buying his games, despite the fact that his games could not be more up my alley. But that's having read this whole thing and seeing how the assumptions that he makes from this point of view make it into every aspect of this game. In PAX Emancipation, if you want to free slaves, it starts in England. You have to do these things in England to begin the process, and that's just wrong. That's just flat out wrong. I'm sorry to hear it, and I'm sorry that it's a part of our hobby. That's all we got. Sorry to end the news on such a bad note, but it's time. It's time to bring things to light, and it's time to call people out when they really, really need calling out.
Hey, if you enjoyed that video, you very well might enjoy the other videos you now see being suggested to you on screen. Also, we'd greatly appreciate it if you could like, share, or subscribe to our Game Brain channel. Thanks so much.